Okay, so very good afternoon. And so we in the previous lecture we have discussed about the various DNS records. So overall we understood that what is the purpose of the DNS service, or basically it's a application level protocol. DNS is an application level protocol which is used for keeping the mapping information between URL and the IP address. So uh, what is the need and how this information is maintained, these things we have already discussed. So coming to this part, these four types of DNS resource records are maintained at a various places, right? So that we'll see in a within the hierarchy at which level what type of records are maintained. So four types of records we have already discussed. Just to recall, for the recalling purpose, I just name it A type record, which keeps the mapping of the host name to the IP address. So each resource record, you can say the each resource record is basically um, four four tuple information is there. So name, value, type, and TTL. TTL indicates that how long this information or this resource record will be there in the particular location where it is stored, that record. So it's a lifetimes, because if it is meanwhile, if this mapping information is changed, so the fresh information can be get from the actual source. In case when it is cached somewhere, then caching will give stale information if it is stored for a 4-hour kind of a thing. So there is always a TTL associated with that. Okay, so A type record is this. Then the CNAME is to keep the information maintained with respect to the aliases of the server or host name. NS record gives the mapping of your domain and the authoritative corresponding, which is authoritative DNS server is there, right? And the MX record keeps the mapping of the host name and the mail server, right? So even using the so by MX record, we can have a host name, right? We can give the same alias. The same alias can be used for the mail server and the web server. So that's the advantage of MX. Okay, so now we'll say, so first look at the message, the DNS message format. So DNS is a basically is a query and response sort of a protocol. Means query is sent by the client, and the server respond the reply message response. So the same format is used through the flag. It is indicated that these flags. So these are flags. So this flag indicates whether it is a query or reply, whether recursion is desired or recursion is available. Because recursive query, you know that, okay, recursive queries are not preferred at a root servers or a top level domain. So that's why recursion may be disabled. Also, it can be enabled or disabled, depends upon using this flag. And then whether the reply is authoritative reply or it is a non-authoritative reply. Means reply is coming from authoritative server or it is coming from somewhere cache, right? And each message is identified with a 16-bit. So 2-byte, first 2-byte here is for use for identification, means some unique identifier is used. And this unique identifier for query reply to query, the same for the corresponding reply, the same identifier is used. So the requester come to know that, okay, because requester may send multiple query messages. So through this unique number, 16-bit number, it can figure out that, okay, it is for which query message the response is arrived now. So with respect to a requester, this unique 16-bit identification is used. And DNS uses, because application server, application level protocol, so it uses as a transport layer. What service it uses? It uses the UDP as a transport layer. So UDP, we know, as of now, we know that, okay, there are two types of services available at a transport layer. One is reliable service, that is TCP. HTTP uses the TCP service, and then another service which is the unreliable service, which is UDP. Okay, and DNS uses UDP. So here my question is that means also this question I post in the discussion forum also. So I'm not right now I'm answering, but I just uh, tell to all of you that just figure out that why the DNS is using or for the DNS application transport service is used. What is the reason for that? In place of unreliable service, if the TCP would have been used, then what would be the scenario? So that you need to figure out. Okay. So this message format looks very simple, the DNS message format. So the questions and the answers are basically in the form of resource record. Questions means what type of query is been asked for the A record or NS record, or so different types of records are there. Um, so um, which resource records are requested by the requester. So then in the here you can see that the questions means different questions and then their answers, and whether it is coming from authoritative or any other additional information. Sometime means if you are looking for certain records, and then additional records also can be pushed into that, so that subsequent query the RTT can be saved. Okay, so now we will understand this. So for suppose I go for I want to register a new host name for a new domain. Suppose a web service I have created, and this web service I want to the corresponding DNS records I want to place in the DNS hierarchy, so that my service is accessible uh, from the outside, right? People can access my service. So any newly created domain name that should be first registered at a registrar. So registrar is basically a agency, or you can say it's an organization which maintains all uh, these records. Sorry, DNS. This domain name registration, this takes care of that. And there is an organization which is Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN, that accredits the registrars. And accredited registrar list, if you want to see which are the accredited registrar list, which is available, that list is available at internic.net. So you can find who is the nearest, you can contact, and then you can register your domain name there. Now, when you initiate a process of registration, then what are the things are required from your side? Means what the registrar that organization will ask you, right? So, for example, we'll take one example that we created a domain, and that domain we want to register with some registrar. So let us say my domain name is abc.com. Okay, take a simple domain name. So this is my domain name or host name basically. Okay, so this is host name, means on this I am maintaining a web service. So if people will type abc.com, then they will be able to connect to, they will be able to retrieve the information which I placed, deployed on this web service. Now, when I go with this domain name, okay, so first I have to give the domain name, and then the registrar will ask me that what are the primary and the secondary authoritative servers for you. So these authoritative servers are usually either maintained at a the organization can maintain in its own premises, or it can be there at a service provider side, means from where you have purchased the internet link, and you received a block of IP addresses, right? So it can be at either place. So it can be authoritative DNS server can be maintained at your side premises, or it can be there at a means your service provider side also. So let us assume that okay, for this there are So why they ask for the two? So in case if one is not working, not able to reachable, then other authoritative server can reply or can be the clients can access. So let us assume that okay, the authoritative DNS servers for this that information authoritative DNS servers. So these authoritative DNS servers for what? For my domain name. For my domain name. Right. So they, let us say their, so the authoritative server also needs to be identified through the what? So through the URL only. So DNS1 abc.com. Let us say this is my one authoritative server. Second authoritative server is dns2.abc.com. Now for these two means the corresponding IP address also I need to specify. So let us say the IP address for this is 210.10.20.5 and for this IP address is 210.10.20.6. So this is a first authoritative DNS server information and this is second authoritative DNS that information. Now that information I have to provide to registrar where I am registering my domain, right? Now what registrar will do, it will insert the appropriate DNS records so that your service is accessible from the outside world. So at top level domain, what record it will insert? So at TLD servers at top, so now which TLD it will use means that is .com, the TLD which is responsible for .com. So the TLD, what are the TLD records will be inserted? Okay, where it is inserted, I think it is clear to you that okay, it is the TLD server which is responsible for the .com domain. So at TLD, what records will be inserted? So TLD records will be what? So one is that it should insert the record for the NS record issue because TLD will when the query will come for this domain abc.com, then what is the TLD's responsibility? TLD's responsibility is to reply in the TLD's reply. What will be sent? The authoritative server information. So the TLD should maintain first the NS record for your domain. So NS record for your domain will be what? So my domain is abc.com and so this is the name and the value will be the corresponding DNS server dns1.abc.com, correct? And record type is NS and some TTL value will be associated with that. So this is corresponding to one authoritative server. Similarly, for other authoritative server also one more record will be there. Okay, I am not writing here complete. So abc.com slash comma DNS2. Okay, so that record also will be inserted. So the two NS record are inserted. Now through the NS record, if it means this TLD will be able to reply the okay, who is the which is the authoritative DNS server for this domain. So the requester, after getting this DNS server information, the requester can connect to get the connect to the this server, authoritative server, and get the information. Correct? What else it is required here? Means it will get the domain name information, but sorry, this authoritative server name information, but it requires IP address also to connect to that authoritative server, right? Otherwise, how it will connect to the authoritative server? So a record for this authoritative server will also be stored here at a TL. So a record will be what for this? How it will be? So a record for this. So DNS1.abc.com and IP address for this is 210.10.20.5. Record type is A and TTL. So this record also will be there and corresponding second for the second authoritative server, the A record also needs to be stored here. Correct? So now these two records are sufficient for the at a TLD. So the TLD can reply accordingly. Then the next record that the user needs to store as its authoritative DNS server. So that means the user have a direct access, means user knows that okay, which server is my authoritative server. Either it is maintained at a on premises or maybe at a ISP. So it will request to the ISP, its service provider person, and then these records will be stored. So what records will be stored at an authoritative DNS server? Authoritative DNS server. So at authoritative DNS server, what record will be inserted? So the first record will be inserted is that your A record for the domain. So A record for the domain is abc.com, that is your domain, and IP address of 10.5. Okay, this IP address will be different because this is the authoritative DNS server's IP address, and this is your host names, or your host name IP address is there, and record type is A, and the TTL it will store. Now, so that this is sufficient for means your service. So after that, your service will be accessible. So anybody can access that service, right? So the DNS system will be sufficiently equipped with the required information, which needs to access your web service. Now, apart from that, you say you have a alias name is also there. So that alias name information can also be stored, that needs to be stored at authoritative DNS server. So suppose you have a.com is a alias name, one alias name for your web service. This is a alias. Okay. So this is a alias. So alias of what is a canonical name for this? Means this I say is a canonical name, abc.com, original name, and which record name type will be used? CNAME, and corresponding TTL value will be there. So with this record, if somebody is accessing your website with a.com, that also will be able to. So first from a.com, if somebody is typing a.com, then from a.com it will get the canonical name using the CNAME record. Once it knows this, then it will get the a record of this domain. So a record of this domain, it will get the information IP address from here, from this record, and then it can using this IP address, the server can be reachable. Server will be reachable. Suppose I have a mail server also I'm maintaining on this domain. So my canonical name for web server is abc.com, and the corresponding mail server domain name is mail.abc.com, correct? And this record will be MX record, right? And the corresponding TTL. So this is for the mail aliasing, mail server aliasing. So your mail server canonical name is basically mail.abc.com, but you can give a same alias name which is equivalent to your host name. So somebody can access a mail service using abc.com, then because it is a mail application, so mail application first it will find the corresponding canonical name corresponding to this alias name, right? So and then once it is get, then this a record of the mail server I need to that I need to also store. Mail abc.com a record I need to store, means the mail.abc.com its IP address, and then a is a record type and TTL. So that record also will be inserted. So this is the way how you need to insert the appropriate record at appropriate in the hierarchy of DNS hierarchy. So is there any question till this point? Or can we move to the next slide? Yeah.
Sir, I had it out. The alias name must also be stored at the TLD records, sir.
Alias name at TLD is not required, because TLD will tell that means basically your domain name and your corresponding authoritative server, right? And domain name is canonical name of the domain name,
Sir,
which is original.
if a if
Uh,
a if a client is typing a.com in the browser,
hmm.
then the TLD, if the TLD does not have a.com, then we do not know that he is trying to communicate to abc.com.
So what will that respond? So yes, right. Uh, huh. So yeah, sometime okay. In this case, it will be required, but sometime we have a alias like means that is in which suppose a1.abc.com, that kind of alias is there. So in that it will see, okay, this is abc.com. So abc.com corresponding authoritative server, it will get this information from TLD, and this particular you can say subdomain information, which is that it can get from the authoritative DNS server. But yes, in this case, because it is not like a subdomain, it looks like a completely different name, right? A.com and abc.com. So
Yes.
if, then a CNAME will be required here. You are right. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I understood.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so now move to the another popular application which we use, file transfer application. So file transfer for application, the FTP is a protocol which is used. So in FTP, you see, so FTP is also a client server kind of a protocol, and it is used to transfer file to or from the remote host. The client side, as in the client server, the client side initiates the transfer, and just a moment, and server is basically responding to the client. Uh, Usually for these protocol, in a book also you might have seen that, okay, there's something called as RFC number is mentioned. So RFC is basically request for comment documents, is standard documents for the protocol. When any new protocol comes up, then there is a RFC is created, and they invite some comments on that, and it's a very detailed document for a given protocol. So, and these RFCs have always a lifetime, means it's not that, okay, it's a, so you will see that, okay, even FTP also, the first RFC maybe 959, after that subsequent uh, in a uh, time that different RFCs have been up, these RFCs are updated, means adding some new features or extension to the protocol and so on. So that terminology also you should understand. If you just see that, so this protocol is a very simple, we'll see that basic operation, but it uses the port number 21. It's a well-known, you can say, application. DNS also use the UDP port number 53. UDP is a transport layer service. So that port number 53 is reserved for the DNS. Similarly, for FTP protocol, the port number 21 is, so it's a basically identification of the application which is running in your machine, because in your machine multiple applications can run. So we learned that, okay, port number is another level of addressing the process, right? So this process belongs to FTP. So then always it will use a identification as a port number 21. More on this sockets and you can say port number we'll do in the when after this next lecture. I think next lecture we'll start that part. So there we'll understand more on this relationship between sockets, port, and how they are same or different, right? So this FTP uses means which transport layer FTP is supposed to use? TCP, because when a file transfer cannot afford any byte loss, so it requires a reliable service at a transport layer. So FTP is slightly different than HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol also you can say, right, this is also basically a file transfer, but that is means there is a difference. So you can see the difference. FTP, the first difference is in terms of the number of connections which are open. FTP is a stateful protocol actually, and for state meaning of that stateful is it opens two connections. So one connection at a port number 21, which you already seen, that is a control connection on which the commands, FTP commands, authorization, when you user access, username, password you enter, and then you use some commands like open file, delete file, rename file, upload file, download file, all these commands which you use on FTP client. So these commands mean transfers through this connection, and this connection is throughout the session it remains open. And then for let us say you open a file, you say list of files you want to, so the list of file will be transferred over a file. If suppose you are downloading a file, then the file will be, for downloading the file, this another connection, TCP connection will be open, that is on port number 20, and on that the data will be transferred. Once the data transfer complete, then the connection, data connection will be closed. And then one more file, suppose in the same session you are opening one more file, you are downloading one more file, then again one more connection will be open on port 20, and then the file transfer will be done on that, and then the connection will be closed. So this on demand, this connection will be open and close, and this control connection across the, means throughout the session, means as long as you are not exit from that from that FTP server, this connection remains open. So using this, basically the you can say the state is maintained. What's in each you can say when you access a FTP server, then your entire history, means it is maintained by the on this connection. So these are the typical commands. So like user is a command, USER, username. So you supply the username, and then the password, pass command is used for giving the password. So once you authorized the FTP server is, so then the status code, the return for this will be so similar to the HTTP, but yeah, again 331 means username, okay, and then it will ask for the password, okay, then you give the password, then it will open the connection. And then you can use these commands like list is a one command, return the list of files in the current directory. RETR means retrieve the file, it is equivalent to getus, and store the file, that is equivalent to putus for file into. And error messages are displayed like if you suppose there is some problem, you are not able to connect to that server, then, or not able to retrieve a file which you are requesting, then it will, the error message will come as a 452 error writing into the file. It's not able to write into the file due to some problem at the server side. So this is, so any FTP any application, file transfer application, the underneath is this protocol which is working. There are some variants, means of FTP protocol. This is a basic FTP protocol is there. So as a user interface, you may get a different thing, but underneath this, these are the commands which are used. As a good UI can be created, and then you just click some buttons, and but under these buttons, these commands are used, basic commands for FTP. The So more on this will be in the lab. FTP and DNS, you will see these will through the packet capture Wireshark tool. We will understand the means how, what kind of packets are captured. And one important thing of FTP is that whatever username and password which you are sending on the Wireshark, which are going in the plain text. So in a Wireshark packet capture, you can get these. The password and your username and password you can read in the packet captures through the Wireshark, right? So if it is a plain FTP protocol, FTP don't use any encryption and all, but over the FTP, like you might have observed in the first lab, that if HTTPS connection is there, that is a TLS, transport layer security, that TLS 1.2 or 1.1 protocol is used, then your basically is HTTP over TLS, so it's encrypted, right? The plain HTTP means basic HTTP protocol, there is no encryption is there, but if we use with this TLS SSL layer, then all the messages which are exchanged between the two, between the client and server of the HTTP, that will be that are encrypted. That's why you are not able to see what there is, this message is there inside that. Okay, so next means application which is, that is the email application. So email application means we were using since so many years, I think. So in that we'll see that, okay, what are the various protocols and various components and how it works. That is very important, right? So there are three major components of a email. One is a user agent. So user agent means Outlook or Thunderbird that we use. That's then the mail servers. Mail server contains the incoming messages for the user. And I think you will be surprised that email application was created. This application came before the HTTP actually. It is older than the HTTP, right? So this is, you can say, the very first kind of application which is after coming the internet, that application was created, and HTTP came after that. The protocol which is used for the mail transfer, okay, that is SMTP. There are different protocols are involved. We'll see one by one. So SMTP is something simple mail transfer protocol as indicates. So you can see in this picture, so you have a user agent which is running as a client and on your machine, right? And mail server is something that is not residing at a client side. Okay, this is also one thing that you just keep in your mind, that okay, so why the mail server is not we don't put at a client machine itself. Okay, so keep in mind and try to see that, okay, try to observe from my uh, explanation that what could be the reason for that. Okay, I will not explicitly answer. So mail server is so you have something like that. You have a user. So user is using some mail service, right? And then the you can say client side or sender side, the sender who is sending the mail, sender side mail server. Then the sender is sending a mail to, suppose I'm sending mail from Gmail, Google Mail service to, let us say, Rediff. So my mail server will be there in Google, maintained by the Google, and the recipient mail server is maintained by the Rediff, right? So that, so mail servers are so basically the communication which is going. Okay, so first let me, I think, yeah, we'll come to this part later. So first we'll see the mail transfer process. So this is a typical scenario. So this is a user agent, and user agent like your uh, Outlook or Thunderbird you have. So you are using that user agent and you create the message. So first step is that create the mail message. Okay, so in that you will write your content, the mail which you want to send, and the sender name, who is the sender, and the receiver name. So first we'll understand the process, and then we'll go to the the protocol. What, as a protocol level, what messages are sent. So first we'll see the process. So like that, the user will create the use the facility which is provided by the client, in the user client, and then it will request to the client to send this mail, right? So the second, in the second step, basically your user agent is sending this mail to your mail server first. Your mail server, your means sender side mail server. So first, suppose you are sending from Google, it will go to the Google's mail server first. From your machine to the Google's mail server it goes, right? So now at here, this message is queued because there may be thousands of other messages are already there. So here the message is queued. Now from here, one by one, it will take the message, and then it will say whatever who is the recipient mail server. So there will be a TCP connection will be established between the sender's mail server and the recipient mail server. So this TCP and the port, because this is also a well-known application, so well-known port is used, that is port 25. So SMTP protocol will work if SMTP protocol uses port number 25 as TCP port. And why TCP? Because we need a reliably the mail contents needs to be transferred. So it uses the TCP. So there is a direct connection between the sender's mail server between the sender mail server and the receiver's mail server. Direct connection is there. There is no intermediate server is there, right? Direct TCP connection established. And then over that, this message will be transferred. So now my message sent this, the Alice mail, mail is stored now, the mail which is sent by the Alice to the Bob. So now after this, the mail sent by the Alice is stored in the Bob's mail server. Now Bob's mail server, from the Bob's mail server, it will go to the Bob's mailbox, because Bob is maintaining its mail account on this mail. Bob's mail account is maintained in this mail server. So it will go to the Bob's mailbox, right? From this server, it will go to the mailbox. This mailbox is also maintained in the same server only, right? And then the next thing is that from this, the Bob can uh, retrieve this message, or Bob can read this message. So there are two ways actually. One is that Bob can log into the mail server, and then it can see that, okay, what are messages are there in my mailbox, okay? Or other is that Bob can use some mail access protocol. See, uh, SMTP is a kind of a push based protocol. SMTP is push based protocol. What do you mean by the push based? Means SMTP is used here. SMTP send the message from here to here. So it's a, so here SMTP. On this server, the SMTP, you can say client and the server, both versions are running. So in this case, SMTP, so the SMTP client which is running here, that is sending the message to the this SMTP server. Now, then the client version of the SMTP is running here on this sender's mail server, and here the server version is there, right? So it is sending. So you see the nature of the SMTP protocol is designed in such a way, it's a push based, it's a pushing the message actually, right? And you know that STTP, if you just try to compare that SMTP and STTP, so SMTP is a push based protocol, HTTP is a pull based protocol. The STTP is designed like it's a pulling the information from the server. SMTP is a pushing the information, right? So that's a one, you can say, the way the protocol have been designed, the difference is there. Okay, so this process, so here SMTP, here also SMTP is working, and SMTP to SM, here can user agent can access, means access the mail messages using the SMTP? No. So here the SMTP protocol is not used between when the user is accessing from that, because it is not a, SMTP don't have the pull based mechanism. It's a push based mechanism. So here a different protocol will be used. Okay. So that different, this protocol is basically the which are used here, we call as a mail access protocols. Mail access protocols. And these mail access protocols are POP3. Sorry, POP3 is a one protocol, and another is IMAP. There are two popular protocols are there. I'll come to that in the next slide. Now, this is the typical communication between the, when a TCP connection established between the two mail servers, right? And then they, how they means, so first thing is that they introduce, so this is a SMTP handshaking happens first. So first TCP connection established, that have its own mechanism of establishing the TCP connection, we will learn when we'll discuss the transport layer services. So right now assume that, okay, fine, there is a mechanism in which a TCP connection established, because a reliable connection, so both sides maintain some variables to achieve the reliability. Then after this connection is TCP connection is established, then the application level, that SMTP do handshaking, right? SMTP protocol also have a handshaking process. So they introduce it, server and client introduce itself using the name. So it's here, it is the sender is hamburger.edu, and the client is krebs.fr, right? So hello message it sends, right? Then server respond with that hello, and okay, some message is sent that pleased to meet you. Then client will send. So client is sending these messages. The client means that means the side that is pushing the message to the. So that is the. So in this case, this is a client and this is a server. Okay, if the mail message is coming from here, so this is client and this is server. So client side messages, you can see that, okay, it's a mail from and then receipt to whom it want to send the mail, right? And then it will send the data, right? Data. So data is basically in each line, so will be terminated by the new line character. And then finally the message will be terminated by the dot. That's a semantic of this protocol. So dot means, okay, there is no content after that. And then server, and then after that client will quit. So client have sent these messages. First is hello, then mail from, receipt to, and data, and then it multiple line data can be sent, and then finally data is terminated by dot and the quit. And server, you can say server is basically checking that, okay, client is okay, recipient is okay, sender is okay, recipient is okay, and then receive the message accepted for the delivery. So these are codes which are there, 250 and 220 are codes which are used, and then closing the connection. So closing connection code is 221. So this process happens when a mail is transferred by a SMTP client to a SMTP server. And uh, on each mail server, the client and you can say the client and server, both applications are there, because um, a server needs, suppose a mail is sent by Bob to Alice, then this mail server, the it will work as a client SMTP, and this mail server will work as a server SMTP. Now, as I said that, okay, between the user agent and the mail server here SMTP works, and then between two mail server SMTP protocol works. But for accessing the mail, the SMTP cannot be used because SMTP is a push based protocol, not a pull based protocol. So for mail access, there are POP3 is used. POP3 uses a port number 110, and it is called as a post office protocol. And the POP3 works in a two modes. If you have used sometime configure your user client, this user agent, mail agent, if you have configured, then it offers two options. One is you can download and keep the messages on the server, mail server. Another is you can download and delete the messages from the mail server, right? And so, and then the user can create folders and move the message into them locally. Means download all the messages from the mail server, and the local machine I can maintain, I can group these messages into different folders, etc. So but in POP3 means it's a stateless across the sessions. Means if you accessing your mails from multiple devices, you have configured the mail agent at two devices, laptop and your mobile phone. Then what happened? Uh, across the sessions, it is the state is not maintained. So if you have means download and delete you're done, then what happen, your messages will be deleted from the main server, you will not be able to access that. And whatever folders which you are creating, means in which you are putting the messages on your local machine, that cannot be accessible by through the another device, right? So this protocol is a very basic protocol, and limited features are there. A better protocol for mail access is the internet mail access protocol, and that have more features, including manipulation of the stored message on the server itself, and which is mostly mail services are using nowadays, IMAP, Internet Mail Access Protocol. So it allows to create remote folders and maintains user state information across the sessions. So nowadays, suppose you Google Mail, Gmail you are accessing, and you access from your laptop, and then you access from your mobile also. So suppose you deleted some mail, or you have done, you created some folders, that will be visible or accessible to you through the which you have done on your laptop, that will be available into your mobile phone also, right? So that is the, because they use the IMAP protocol is used as a mail access. So it allows means manipulation at the server itself. POP3 doesn't allow any manipulation at a server. You just it provides two options: download and keep, and download and delete. And another feature of the IMAP is that it permits a user agent to obtain components of the messages. Sometime you might have observed when you're accessing mail from your mobile phone, then it says, okay, the attachment means do you need, or attachment we can omit. So without attachment also mail you can download or you can retrieve the mail. So this feature means good for when you have a low bandwidth connectivity. Usually at mobile phone you have either 3G, 4G or Wi-Fi connections, and these connections sometimes have a lesser bandwidth available, so it saves the bandwidth. So it also gives the feature of means partially also mail can be accessed, means attachments can be omitted. So this is a typical POP3 protocol communication, simple protocol. For POP3, it authorize the means user. For that, username password is required. Once the server response come, okay, it is okay, then you can do these operations: list, retrieve, delete, and quit. That's all. Okay, you cannot create folders, etc. All these things. Now, uh, most of us nowadays we use mail access we do through the web-based mail access we do, right? And Hotmail, the very first time have introduced the web-based mail access in mid of 90s, right? So that was the first, you can say, web-based mail access service. So far, which we have talked about is the mail access is through the user agent like Outlook Express, Outlook or Thunderbird, or there are some other mail access mail agents are there, client agents. Yeah, mail agents are available. Now, how the web-based mail access is different. So in a web-based mail access, from the user, you can say user agent is now browser in place of your uh, Outlook or Thunderbird. In place of that, the user agent is web browser, right? And the protocol which is used between the web browser, means the client, and the your side's mail server, sender side's mail server, is that HTTP protocol. Rest of the things are same. TCP connection is opened, and over the TCP connection, uh, it is the HTTP protocol is now used, and through the HTTP protocol, it transfer the information, right? And then the sender's mail server and the receiver's mail server, between that the same process is there. SMTP protocol is used, and the direct direct in the sense means there is no intermediate device is there. From the sender side mail server to the receiver's mail server, the message is transferred. I mean, direct, don't understand that, don't take it like that, okay, there is a one means point to point link is there between there may be intermediate routers are there, but a TCP connection which is established, that is at a direct sender's mail server, between the sender's mail server and receiver's mail server. And for the access also, the HTTP protocol is in place of POP3 and IMAP. The HTTP protocol is used. So you can directly, actually through the IMAP, you are manipulating your mails at a mail server itself, right? So that is across the multiple sessions. Across the sessions, your whatever manipulation you are doing in your mailbox, these manipulations are visible across the sessions. So that's the, so this is the way how we use. Okay, so I think this is about the few of the applications we have discussed, which are client server based applications, right? So these are all comes under the client server based mail application. SMTP, one more thing just I want to tell you, and then I think we can close it. SMTP is, because it was designed, this protocol came, even as I said that, okay, before the HTTP protocol. So uh, SMTP server is when SMTP transfer the message in ASCII format, actually. ASCII 7-bit. So the information is encoded in the ASCII 7-bit format, and it is good for means normal text, simple text based messages. And because at that time people thought that, okay, means simple text based one line, two line, few line messages will be sent. So this format is okay for that. But nowadays, you know that means we use multimedia content in that. And so for that, this ASCII is not, it's very painful in the sense that it takes a lot of efforts to convert this into the corresponding ASCII and takes time consuming. But uh, because of history, this SMTP is uh, means, so any multimedia message is there, first it will be converted into corresponding ASCII, and then the SMTP messages can be sent. And at the receiving side, again that ASCII to in a binary it is converted, and then only it is displayed. HTTP protocol works on a different encoding schemes. It is not using ASCII, which is more suitable to the multimedia contents, right? But SMTP has not been upgraded even, so the basic protocol is still using the ASCII 7-bit format. And for transfer, SMTP transfer always happens using this encoding only. So that you can say is a kind of a overhead. Or so that's all from my side. The next thing is that we will do in the tomorrow's class. That is, now we will shift our attention towards the another class of application, which is a peer-to-peer application. So far we have discussed few of the application, which is a client-server applications. Now we'll shift to the peer-to-peer application. So that we'll do in the next class. Okay, so basic architecture of peer-to-peer and how the client-server mechanism is different from the peer-to-peer, and how both are means their means limitations and pros and cons, etc. And few examples of peer-to-peer applications we'll discuss. Okay, so that's all from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Oh,